Hello everybody, this is Refresh and I'm here to bring you a look at this Magic the Gathering Sarkhan Planeswalker deck from Core Set 2019. Unlike previous Planeswalker decks, this is a monocolor deck. It is just red. On the back here it says that it is Sarkhan Dragonsoul. Sarkhan worships and communes with dragons, taking on their power as his own, mobilizes mighty draconic forces to incinerate your opponent's defenses and expose them to an aerial attack. The contents include a deck box, a ready-to-play 60-card deck, one 15-card booster pack, a strategy insert, and a magic quick reference card. If you've seen previous Planeswalker decks, you may notice that there's only one booster pack in this Planeswalker deck, unlike the two that is in the previous Planeswalker decks, but the MSRP of this deck has been reduced to reflect the reduced number of booster packs in this deck. This also happens to be Sarkhan's very first Planeswalker deck, so let's take a look at what's inside. Alright, here's our Sarkhan Dragonsoul Planeswalker card. It's a little bent, and it costs 6 mana, which is on the slightly more expensive side for these Planeswalker deck cards. And you get a legendary Planeswalker Sarkhan. He comes into the battlefield with 5 loyalty. For +2, you can deal 1 damage to each opponent and each creature your opponents control. For -3, Sarkhan deals 4 damage to target player or planeswalker, and -9, you can search your library for any number of dragon creature cards, put them onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. So that is quite a powerful ultimate, and maybe that's why this costs 6 mana as opposed to the 5 that some of these planeswalkers in this set will cost. We get a deck box with some Sarkhan artwork on it. Inside we have our deck. We have one Core Set 2019 booster pack as advertised. We have a quick reference guide. This has been the same quick reference guide that the Planeswalker decks have been having since the very first Planeswalker deck, as you can see here from Kaladesh. And this gives you a little bit of information about how to cast spells, reminders of what the different card types are, what the types of mana are, and what lands produce them. It tells you how to set up the game, how to win the game, and the different parts of the turn. This is only useful if you already know how to play the game. You just need a little bit of a reminder because you're still somewhat new and you haven't really nailed down the different phases of a turn. So it is for a narrow band of people who are relatively new but not brand new, and everybody else this is not helpful for. This is the strategy insert. It says that before you play, the deck is ready to go, so make sure that you play the deck a few times before you start upgrading it with the included booster packs. Playing the deck gives you a little bit of strategy on how to play the game. It's a bit generic, and it doesn't tell you what cards do the things that it's asking you to do, so it falls very short of a deck tech, but I think it does give you some better direction than some of these strategy inserts have in the past with what you're supposed to be doing, especially because it tells you what the mechanics are of the different cards that you want to be using in that strategy. There's also a URL here for instruction on how to use Planeswalker cards. I feel like this is a lot to type in, and I feel like this sheet should already include those instructions. There's also a little bit of information about who Sarkhan is. It's very scant, so you don't really get to know much of Sarkhan's story. There are a few bits of information here on some of the mechanics that you're going to find in the deck, which is good, especially for a core set deck, which is geared towards beginners. On the back, you just have ads, and that's disappointing because there's so much more about this deck that this strategy insert should have, but it doesn't, and that's where we are. Let's take a look at the deck. Our rare is a Demanding Dragon. It's a 5 mana 5/5 flying Demanding Dragon enters the battlefield. It deals 5 damage to target opponent unless a player sacrifices a creature. This is a pretty good card. It was a powerhouse in Limited for sure, and some decks in Constructed did use this, so this is a nice card to have. Shivan Dragon is one of the other dragons in the deck, and it is a dragon that goes all the way back to some of the first sets of Magic ever, and is iconic in that way. It's also a rare that's available in the Welcome deck, so those of you who have picked up a Welcome deck might recognize this dragon from that M19 Welcome deck as well. It's a pretty strong creature even now for a fairly simple deck like this one versus other simple decks like it, and it can do a whole lot of damage. So if you have 2 dragons, the Demanding Dragon is obviously a little bit more powerful than the Shivan Dragon, but you don't want to discount this in a Planeswalker deck sort of format. The searching card for this deck is Sarkhan's Dragonfire. It costs 5 mana, and it deals 3 damage to any target. And then you look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a red card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now this is a pretty decent card because it does a little bit of damage, so you can get rid of one of your opponent's creatures possibly, and then it basically draws you a card as long as you don't draw 5 lands in a row. Now, you may not get the best card, and it doesn't search for Sarkhan like the previous searching cards did in Planeswalker decks. So that's a little disappointing that it doesn't count as additional copies of Sarkhan, but it is nice that you could theoretically get a 2-for-1 out of this. It is a bit expensive at 5 mana, but the effect that you're getting isn't bad. You have 26 mountains in this deck. And then Sarkhan's specific creatures here are Kargan Dragon Riders. For 2 mana, you get a 2/2 human warrior, and as long as you control a dragon, Kargan Dragon Rider has flying, so that is the common for Sarkhan. It is a mediocre creature at first, but it does become a flyer and does help you win the game once you get a dragon into play, so that's not bad for a common. Sarkhan's Whelp is Sarkhan's uncommon, and for 3 mana you get a 2/2 with flying, so it costs a little bit more than the Dragon Rider, but you get flying built into it. And then it says, whenever you activate an ability of a Sarkhan Planeswalker, Sarkhan's Whelp deals 1 damage to any target. So this is a little different than previous uncommons that we've seen that just need the Planeswalker to be in play. And it's any Sarkhan Planeswalker as well, so this works with any Sarkhan Planeswalker. And so activating the ability lets us do 1 damage to any target, which could be pretty cool. It only amounts to 1 damage a turn, but that could get rid of an X1 type creature or just do a little bit more damage to your opponent's head. And that's not bad. And that is the Sarkhan Dragonsoul Planeswalker deck. I'm going to go play some games with it, and then I'll be back to let you know what I think about it. So I got to playing this deck a little, and I have some thoughts. The first thing is that this deck has a very loose dragon sub-theme. The payoffs are quite limited. It's just the Kargan Dragon Rider that gets flying, and that's pretty good at its rate if you control a dragon. And then you have Sarkhan himself, which will give you a payoff if you can ultimate him by letting you search your library for any number of dragon creatures and put them all on the battlefield. So those are the only payoffs for the dragon theme, so it's kind of light in terms of payoffs, but dragons are pretty decent anyways as far as casual creatures go, and so I think this deck kind of operates a bit like a mid-range deck. The idea is that you play some creatures early, get some damage in, and then you're trying to stall out until you can play your big dragons with a bit of removal here to help you control the board, and then some means of direct damage like the shocks, the lightning strikes, the Sarkhan's Dragonfire, to aim for the dome should you get stalled out on the ground, or to go into the air with the 6 flying dragons that are particularly large. You also have 3 smaller dragons which you can use to get the Kargan Dragon Riders up in the air earlier, and so I think I like kind of what this deck's trying to do. And the Goblin Motivators, which are 1/1s, and you normally think them fairly useless, but because they give you haste, they will let your creatures be a little bit more aggressive than normal, and so you can play your Demanding Dragon, get its benefit of doing 5 damage to a target opponent, or sacrificing a creature, and then swing with it on the same turn, and that is a fine creature for that reason. And then your Sarkhan's Dragonfire is probably one of the better search cards that are in any of these decks because it deals damage to any target. It means that it can remove a creature and then you can use it to get a card, and so that's excellent card advantage. And then with this deck you even have options like Thud, which you can use to sacrifice one of your stalled out creatures for an additional damage. It's a 2-for-1 in yourself, but at the same time you can remove something, or you can just finish off your opponent with one of your bigger creatures like a pumped up Shaven Dragon. And so I think this deck works fairly well. There are some unexcited cards here, like the Onake Ogres, which are 4/2s, but they don't have any evasion, and so a lot of times they're just going to be blocked by a 2/2 and trade down. And then you have the Hostile Minotaur, which, it's hasty, I guess, which is just better than a pure 3/3 for 4, but it's not exactly the kind of card that you're looking to draw, especially when you have haste givers like the Goblin Motivator. The 4-drop slot is a little light, and it's kind of weird because it gives this deck this weird anti-curve. For the most part, I think that this deck works for what it's trying to do. It's not the most exciting deck, but you have Sarkhan, he likes dragons, you get all the dragons, and then his +1 isn't that impressive, but at the same time, for those that like dragons and want a very dragony Planeswalker deck, this is going to give you kind of what you want. The other thing that I would criticize this deck for is having 26 lands. There is one 7-drop, and I understand that there's a good number of 6-drops in this deck, but 26 just still feels just slightly excessive for what this deck is trying to do. I would have actually preferred trading one of these mountains for something like a Manolith or some sort of ramp, because this deck has no way of getting to 7 very quickly, or even 6 very quickly, and the Shivan Dragon, that wants as much mana as you can feed it. So I would have preferred some sort of ramp instead of the extra mountain. But that's a mild criticism. Let me know what your thoughts about this deck are in the comments below if you had any chance to play with it. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button if you'd like to see more such videos. Hit subscribe. This was Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.